All right, welcome to 755 Forever. I'm David O'Brien, Braves writer at The Athletic. I'm with my usual co-host, Eric O'Flaherty, former Braves reliever. What's up, Eric?
What's up?
Well, we got a good guest today, a special guest, the new Braves broadcaster. I know everybody's kind of eager to hear CJ do his calls because a lot of people haven't, heard him when he was down with the Rangers. And only us older folks remember CJ when he was pitching for the
Thank you.
Braves back in the day. But welcome, CJ. It's good to have you, man.
I was just gonna imitate an old person voice right there, make it seem like I was really old, but I know what you were getting at. Thank you,
I
man. I
remember when I
appreciate it.
pitched for Bobby Cox.
And I appreciate the introduction, man. Everybody has been so amazing. We're just family's been just blown away by everything, man, and we're just excited to get started.
As you can tell, CJ is a professional. He's got his own podcasting booth and microphone there, so this is nothing new to him. So, first of all, hey, for everybody out there, I gave this website last week, but you guys, if you're interested in sponsoring our show, 755 Forever Podcast, the numbers 755 Forever Podcast at gmail.com. Tim Shovers is our producer. Email him there. Let him know. And on our website, we got all kinds of merch now for the first time. T-shirts, mugs, hats, pretty cool stuff. Even slides, shower shoes, sandals, whatever you want to call them. They're pretty cool though. So get over there. Anyway, now back to CJ. CJ, I think your how you got here is kind of interesting to people, how you circled back to the Braves, because here you are covering broadcasting for the Rangers last year, and you got us win a World Series. So I think that probably was maybe a little tougher than it might have been to leave otherwise. But I know you wanted to get back here. You call home Atlanta, or you have for some time now, right?
We have, yeah. We've been living here since '06, and we played here a little bit in '04, about half that season, and then we came back about a year and a half later and have called it home full time since. The first I was in Texas for 7 years. The first six team was below 500 by it was 124 games over those 6 years. They weren't a good team. Not that it has anything to do with anything. And then they go out and of course they win that World Series. And yeah, a little bit of a joke, and that you would leave after winning a World Series. I keep telling people I'm just chasing rings. Like after years of losing as a player, I'm going to try to get some rings I don't deserve. And so yeah, I'm all about it. No, it is about being home. I was still under contract with the Rangers. I'm very forthright about kind of what was going on there with them. I still had a couple of years left. I absolutely loved working there. There was not a single team outside of the Atlanta Braves that I would have even entertained a conversation with about leaving the Rangers, and that's because, of course, we call this home. The icing on the cake is that this is an amazing organization that is in such a great position to win. That's just kind of a bonus, quite honestly, for me. But they were good about it when the opportunity came up. They weren't necessarily happy about it, but it's such a professional organization, much like they are here in Atlanta, that they were cool about letting me go.
Was it the pull of what O'Ventrell did during their few years in the Braves bullpen that you wanted to be part of that greatness, the lingering greatness from the Eric O'Flaherty and Johnny Venters and Craig Kimbrell bullpen? Did that have anything to do with it or no?
I mean, the reality is you just want to get more lefties in the booth. I know, obviously, Tom Glavine, one of the
There you
greats,
go.
but he doesn't work enough games. And, Frenchie, we all love Frenchie, but just trying to get more left-handers in broadcasting is really what this is all about. And relievers, because I think maybe toward Eric's career a little bit, there was more appreciation of what the non-closers did. But for a long time, there was almost zero for the most part as far as appreciation. So we're bringing relievers back. And we're trying to be out in front as much as we possibly can. The non-closing relievers.
Eric's been bringing relievers back and sexy back for some time now. I told Eric he pitched at the wrong time because a couple of years that he had when he had the 1 year with a sub-1 ERA, it was like a record at the time. Those setup guys are making a ton of money, and they didn't make a whole. I mean, don't feel sorry for him. He's rich and all that, but what he would have made compared to now is it's not even comparable.
Yeah,
I think Scott Shields was the only setup man that I knew the name of when I was a kid. That was like a bona fide setup man. Other than that, it was just about the closer.
And then remember
Arthur
the Rangers
Rhodes was a guy that stuck out, as I remember during my career. But I remember sitting in the bullpen, and I pitched 90s into the early 2000s, and I remember sitting in the bullpen one time in Detroit, and I'm watching Todd Jones's unbelievable gig he has, where he's getting a clean ninth inning every single time. And I'm like, and he makes the most money by far. And I'm looking at me and Doug Brocail, and I'm like, man, I'm coming in facing Griffey with a tying run on second base, in the seventh or eighth inning with zero margin for error. And Jonesy's getting a clean inning trying to hold down a 3-run lead, and he's making way more money than I am. I'm like, something's not right about this. So it's good to see that finally they came around and figured it out.
And then back in the day, John Wetland and Rivera were like the first two, really huge 1-2 combo. But that was rare. Nobody had. The Braves forever like had a prominent closer, but then just filled in the bullpen fungible. Each year filled in the bullpen with low-paid guys and usually hit on a few of them enough to have a good bullpen. But their starters went so deep in games that they didn't need to have more than 3 really good relievers they could rely on. That was it. That's all they ever needed.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think if you believe in your system and the idea of getting the most out of guys, quite honestly, like we see the Tampa Bay Rays, I think certainly are known for that right now. It's like, who's the unknown that's joining the Rays that's going to dominate this year that nobody really heard of the year before? Right. And so I think for the Braves and, certainly during the Leo years, finding those 1 or 2 guys, bringing them in, supplement piece. And for the longest time, I joke about the lefties, the righty setup guys got abused forever. For the longest time, like just run them into the ground and move on to the next one back in the day when, 92 to 95 was a good fastball. And not to say those guys were growing on trees, but they would burn through them and then just kind of, find the next one. I'm not saying the Braves, just the game in general.
Oh, well, the Braves did
that's
it.
The reality. That's the reality of being a relief pitcher. At least it was.
Yeah. Yeah. We've talked about, speaking of another one of your relievers that's in the booth, we've talked about Moylo coming back from TJ surgery. Now he led the league in appearances the year after TJ surgery.
And he came back at like 10 months or something. He was ahead of schedule and then pitched in 80-something games. Yeah,
no empathy either. Like, just get back out there. And that was the life. I always said, and once I picked up on this, for those that are old Metallica fans, that, relievers are disposable heroes. I mean, they really are, right? Your non-closers, especially. Think about Scott Proctor as an example, as a guy who was a really good right-handed arm, and couldn't get away from Joe Torre, it seemed like. And there's just certain guys that unfortunately, Ricky Stone was another one during my era where you're throwing a lot of games. Paul Quantrill, it's just kind of the way that it is, and you do your best to survive.
We were happy to do it, though. At least I was.
Yeah.
There was a sense of pride in being able to throw that many games and be ready every day. Long term, it didn't work out, but at the time, it was like a badge of honor you could wear. I'll go 4 in a row or 2 games in it, both games of a doubleheader. I was always proud of that.
And you're right, and I'm with you on that one. And then I look back and I'm like, man, I watched some other guys. Like, I watched guys that have come out of injury. I use my buddy Danny Patterson as an example. Former Ranger, when he got to Detroit, he kind of paced himself, and he was not afraid to ask for a day off, and he was rewarded with a really nice 2-year deal.
Josh Hader.
I remember thinking, man,
Josh
I'm
Hader.
out there. I'm like, you know what? I'm good. Like, Phil Garner for a while, who I had as a manager, come to me, and maybe it's 3 days in a row. I'll never forget this one day we're at Yankee Stadium, and he's like, how do you feeling today? He knew I was, middle of summer, it's getting late. I said, I can get you a hitter day if you need me. Like, I'll, that's when you could come in and just face one lefty and get out of there. I gave up the 2 runners that were on base and then 4 more of my own in that game, and I was furious. I didn't handle it particularly well. But the reality was I was shot. I was worn out. I wasn't hurt. I was just tired. And a lot of other guys would take those days like, nope, I can do it, and sometimes to a fault.
You got a kid that's playing ball in high school, right? Or is he?
Yeah, my youngest. He does, yeah. So we're in Cherokee County, so he's at Creekview High School. He's a sophomore. I have an older one who's graduated from Georgia College. My daughter's at UGA right now as a senior. She's all excited. She just texted us because Kendall Jenner is, I guess, pushing a tequila that they'll be serving tonight at her bar, and apparently Kendall Jenner's going to be there. So she's pretty excited to be in Athens tonight and working at the bar that she works at. But yeah, so we have 3. But yeah, my youngest one, I think he'll have a chance to play in college. He loves the game. He's actually homesick today, but he loves the game. Infielder, pitcher, swings left, throws right. And it's fun, man. Having kids and going through this is fun. It can be stressful at the same time, but I enjoy it.
So this must be great for you when spring training is just around the corner. And in the past, you're probably thinking, okay, I've only got like another month or so before I have to head down to Texas. And then you're going back and forth and coming home, I would imagine, on occasional times you had off. But now you'll be here and just commuting from Cherokee County?
Yep. So it was about 10 days a month that I would have off on average with the Rangers. I was doing about 105 games with them. Wow. They're all road games. So I was basically on the road for,
family's back here
for me. Yeah. 135 nights a year. And I didn't really think much about it. It's like, you know what, you do what you got to do. You grind through it. Great organization, all those kind of things. And it started weighing on me a little bit this past year. Quite honestly, not to be too somber, but, I was thinking about Jim Poole, thinking about Tim Wakefield, 2 guys that were from my era that passed away this year or last year, and they were only 57 years old.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I'm 50 years old, and they were in perfect health when they were 50, and I think I'm in pretty decent health. And I'm like, you know what, man, I'm starting to have these kind of, life thoughts about big picture stuff. And, was there an adjustment to be made? And I wasn't even actively pursuing something else necessarily, just happened to work out where the job opened up. So yeah, that part of it and being home more, catch more games, all that kind of stuff is going to be fun. I will say, my oldest at his high school, they were looking for volunteers to do the PA, like to announce the players, play the
Uh-huh.
music, announce the players. I said to him yesterday, I was like, hey, man, I was like, coach is looking for some guys. He's like, please don't. Just please don't. Can you not please? Like, I get it. You're here. Like, he wants the least amount of attention as possible on all of
Yeah.
us. And so, even though I technically am a professional broadcaster, he'd prefer I not be the PA
Yeah.
guy at his high school games.
Yeah, you got one of those names that now you're doing the Braves games. Anybody that's not aware of who his father is probably going to know pretty soon.
Yep.
Yeah, he ain't having it. He's a good kid, but he's like, he just preferred, like, let's just stay in the background, let me do my thing.
Yeah, so you're away all that time, and you're thinking, what if I, God forbid, I had a stroke tomorrow? You're not going to be
Mhm.
like, okay, I'm glad I was working all this time, accumulating money. I could have been home with my family, and yeah, now you're
For
now you're
sure.
going to
Things
be
came
there,
up.
and
Yeah, I mean, quite honestly, like, my dad passed a couple years ago when he got sick, right? It's in the middle of the season, and you're dealing with that. Same thing with my wife's
right,
father, unfortunately, these last couple of years. So have been dealing with some of that and not always being here, an emergency at home, medical, maybe for somebody in the family. And listen, it could still happen. Obviously, we're still on the road a good amount. But yeah, you start to get older, man. Like I said, I'll be 51 in March. So you get on the other side of 50, and you just start kind of thinking about those things just a little bit more, and seeing some sad things that happen. And of course, we never know. I might make it
yeah,
to 90. I might make it to 52. I don't know. But at the end of the day, yeah, if you can afford to make some changes and opportunities pop up to be home more,
yeah.
I'm all about it.
So what's this going to be like for you? The last year must have been great in so many regards. I mean, you guys won the World Series, and also you got to work with Boch. I mean, you're going from Bruce Bochy to a guy that I think, to me, Snit, I'm sure you've had a chance to meet Snit by now. Um, to me, Brian Snitker is a little bit of Bruce Bochy and a lot of Bobby Cox. He's kind of that guy that the players manager, impossible not to like when you get to meet him. So it must be great for a guy in your shoes who's going to have to, I don't know if you do pregame shows or whatever, but to interact with a manager who's so himself every day, doesn't get wound up in the losses and act like an asshole one day and the next day. I mean, Snit
Yeah.
is always pleasant. I mean, you
Yeah.
never know that if they just won three and if they lost a series in Oakland like they did last year, or if they've won 10 in a row. The guy's the same every day. And I would imagine Boch is a little like that too at this point of his career, right? I mean, he's not going to get
He
real
is.
flustered by things.
He is. Yeah. I tell people all the time I was fortunate, or maybe I don't know how you look at it, or unfortunate. All the bouncing around I did, I played for 40 different managers around the world,
Wow.
which is insane. But some of them for like a minute, but
Yeah.
just a bunch of different guys over the years. And Bruce Bochy, I never obviously played for him, but he slides right up there. I always tell everybody, I'm not just saying this because I've worked for the Braves now. I say this for years. Bobby is at the top of that list of the 40 that I played for, and
Yeah.
seeing Boch and how he operates, a lot of similarities there. No doubt the same thing is going to be the case with Snit. Obviously he's a baseball lifer. He gets it. How do we wave it, the new school and the old school without leaning
Yeah.
one way or the other too heavily? But it feels a little old school, which I'm kind of excited about. And that's also how Bruce Bochy was. The thing that stuck out more than anything I keep telling people with Boch was that how resolute he was in making decisions about pitching changes. Everyone always talked about how great he was with the bullpen. He did not have an easy bullpen to work with. As
Right.
much as the Rangers got it
Right.
together at the right time,
Yeah.
during the season, it
Oh, it was
was,
struggle,
white
wasn't it?
knuckle the whole time. And
Yeah.
so watching him at times, like he would see it right away and there was zero hesitation. He was not going to be that manager like, you know what, let me see if CJ can get out of this. I know he's been working hard. Nope. If you didn't have it, you were gone. Somebody was up. He made that decision. He looked pissed every time he was making it
Yeah.
that you weren't getting it done. I really appreciated that about watching him. I know sometimes it, maybe it would tick guys off, and it didn't matter who you were. Once they picked up Aroldis Chapman last year, and there was times where, man, he could be unbelievable at 101 with a two-seamer, and there's times where he's spraying it all over the place.
Yeah.
And Boch picked up on it quicker than I think any manager I've ever seen, and had somebody backing him up, no matter if there was a lefty, a righty up, didn't matter. As soon as he realized he didn't have it, he got him out of there. He probably hates the 3-batter minimum rule because there was times
Yeah.
he'd have to wait a little
Yeah.
bit. But he was great, and no doubt that Snit is going to be the same way.
Yeah, nothing bothers Snit like walks. And I mean, at times he had to live with them, but if he knew that he had enough guys in his pen that he could make a move, he didn't hesitate to get a guy out of there and a starter and pull a guy starter, especially a younger starter who's not proven himself. He would jerk a guy into second inning sometimes, if he was running, if he knew that day And you'd ask him afterwards, and he goes, "Because I didn't feel like there was any sign that it was going to get better." So
Yeah.
you get him out of there.
It's and it's funny on the pitch selection stuff too. There was a game last year. Will Smith actually stepped up really big for the Rangers. Like the first 4 months of the year, he was really important. I know he struggled down the stretch a little bit, but he was critical. They don't have the year they have without what he did at the very beginning of the year. But he let up a walk-off home run to Patrick Bailey of the Giants, and it was a fastball in, which was kind of surprising that they would go into a righty with a chance. You know, it's kind of that old adage, you try not to finish a game in, especially with him with his heater, right? His slider is his go-to pitch. And so he basically got beat on, I'll say his worst pitch, but not his strength. And Boch was furious. That one felt like it lasted maybe about a day or so, where I think he was mad at Jonah Heim. He was mad at Will Smith for the decision that they made. So there's still some of that there at times when maybe you start getting a little bit too cute, which I think all the old school guys, will be like that anyway, where some of the newer school guys who are relying on data seem to be a little bit maybe more patient and let things go. But I like seeing that once in a while. It's good to have that fire. And then, like you said, eventually everybody's over it, and it's usually over a bottle of wine on the plane.
Have you been as impressed as we have by this, the bullpen that Alex Anthopoulos has put together? I mean, he's gone after the Phillies really, I don't know how much of it was the Phillies pitching, but it was a lot. They brought in so many guys throwing upper 90s, 100. And the Braves, I mean, they had 4 extra base hits and 8 runs in that 4-game NLDS. And some of that, I think, was the break before that. But, velo was the key for those guys. And this year, the Braves had a few guys that had options or they could have brought back, and they let those guys go. And he's going with these power arms from left and right. And this bullpen, I think, potentially is the deepest in the league, if not in the majors. I mean, if these guys are healthy, it's going to be a fantastic bullpen.
Yeah, absurdly deep, right? We saw the news. Of course, I know you guys know that Ken Giles is going to come in as a non-roster, which is a cool story, and I hope he makes it. But as a non-roster, this is not a great bullpen to necessarily come in and try to make, right? That's
He's got confidence in himself,
downside of it. He does. It'll be fun to watch, and he's certainly been a character in the past. I tell you, of all the arms, and I'm with you, this bullpen is ridiculously deep. Having Tyler Matzik back, I think, obviously will be really big and exciting, good story. But the guy that I kind of have my eye on, and maybe because I'm just trying to look for that one guy that maybe people aren't talking about as much, is Aaron Bummer. Because Aaron Bummer, to me, seems like he's going to play such a critical role because he's going to be the guy that's taking on all those inherited runners. Right. I think it was 42 last year, far and away more than any other Brave had. I know it wasn't here, but just kind of comparing what he did last year because of that amazing ground ball rate that he has. And so because this bullpen runs so deep, my guess is he's going to be asked to put out a lot of fires. Early on, you can afford to be conservative with your starters. Obviously, there's some injury history with a couple of guys and a little bit, a couple of guys that are a little bit older. But because of the depth of the bullpen, I think Aaron Bummer's the guy that at certain times, if they're not blowing a team out early, like I know they did so often last year, and need to keep a game close, and even as early as the 5th or 6th inning, it feels like more often than not, he's probably going to be the guy that's asked to do it. If it's a double play situation, if you need a swing and miss, then maybe you go in a different direction. But I think Aaron Bummer, to me, could end up being really key. And again, maybe he'll get the credit, maybe he won't. But for those of us who know, we will certainly appreciate what he's probably doing in those middle innings.
I think that was a great move because Mentor has had to shoulder so much of the load, and he's done a great job with it. But like last year, he had a month where he struggled, and he was the guy they had to bring into any tight situation, and sometimes when it wasn't that tight because they didn't have other lefties at the time. But between Mentor, this is going to ease the burden on him, and Matzik coming back from TJ, they're not going to have to rush Matzik in there. You're not going to have to throw him right into the fire early. I know Matzik's going to want to, but having Bummer, I think, is going to be huge for that, for both of those guys. Having these 3 lefties now, potentially even more than that. And we haven't even talked about Dylan Lee,
Yeah.
I mean, they've
got
Ray
Kerr.
And Kerr.
Chris Jimenez, I work with him on MLB Network Radio, former catcher. And I guess, he's still getting down, and I guess they're in the same area because he's caught some of his bullpens. Yeah. And he was like, dude, where do you see this dude?
Nasty.
Again, sounds great. And, things happen, as we all know what happens, how things over the course of the season and spring training, who breaks camp, who doesn't. But they have depth of even people that probably most fans don't know who they are.
Yeah, a guy like Kerr, people are just dismissed. It was such a relatively minor move in the offseason that everybody's focused on the big ones, but they've done some things that that's going to come to the fore, I think, as the season goes on. People are going to be like, we have him too. Guys coming back at midseason. I mean, they got a lot of guys lined up and then the guy from the Pittsburgh, the hard thrower, who's going to miss this year, but be ready and have a 3 years, I think, of contractual control. They took him because the Pirates didn't want to have a guy on the roster. They're paying to rehab, and the Braves were like, we'll do it. So, I mean, they got arms.
Yep, it's going to be deep. It's going to be fun to watch. And I think on both sides, obviously you guys have seen this team a lot more than I have, but even the young starters, like I'm really excited to see Waldrop in spring training. Their
Yeah.
first round pick last year out of Florida. Like he
That
looks like he might
split
be.
is amazing, man.
Yeah, he
That's
looks like he
nasty.
may be the real deal. He blew through what 4 levels last year.
Yeah.
Again, probably not a spot to break camp, but between him and AJ, and there's pitching depth here too on the starting side.
I think we'll probably see Waltrip by early summer. I mean, the Braves have not hesitated to bring a guy up if they thought he was ready and that he could help them win. I mean, they did it with Soroka the year they brought him from AA, to face the Mets in a big game up there early in the season. So, but they don't have to. That's the cool thing is they got so much depth. They don't have to rush this guy at all. Smith Shawver, they don't have to rush him. I mean, we've talked about the guys that got coming back to have an all-star. People forget how good he was until midseason when he just ran out of gas.
Yeah.
And he's fighting for the 5th spot. So
I know it's crazy with that nasty sinker, man. I've gone back and watched a lot of, starts for all the guys and watching a lot of games. And my goodness, that sinker's amazing. Something you just said there, though, that kind of triggered something else too for me and thinking about what you said about, putting a guy in a big spot. You're not afraid to do it, not afraid to call a guy up. That was another kind of Bruce Bochy thing that caught my attention last year. And again, the old school guys that, if you're on a contender, they're not worried about giving you a soft landing and making your life easy. Like they need to find out quickly, can I count on you? And Boch did that a couple of times. Rookie reliever he brought up, first appearance, tying runs on second base. Like it's just right in the fire. Cody Bradford, who was a lefty, I believe he made his first big league start against the Braves. A lefty against the Braves. Like, here you go. Here's your debut. Go get him.
I
Good
remember
luck.
that.
Yeah, they don't care. And I think, and I said that they don't care. Of course they care. But they're contenders, and they're saying, I want to find out right now. We're not bringing guys up. We're not a rebuilding team. Obviously, the Braves are in that same spot. I think Snit is cut out of that same mold. It's like, listen, we're here to contend. We're here to win. I need to find out pretty quickly. Can I count on you?
Yeah. And Snit got that, I think, a lot from both his minor league background and from Bobby Cox, who Bobby was famous for doing that. He brought a guy up. You knew that guy was getting in that day. He'd bring a position player up. The guy'd be in the lineup that night. I mean, they didn't want a guy sitting around thinking about it, getting nervous or whatever. Just throw him in there and let it, and I think a lot of that now is having confidence in your player development, which the Braves do. They have confidence that when their minor league director and their managers down there tell Snit he's ready, they believe him and they bring the guy up like they did with Michael Harris. Brought him straight from AA. People were like, really? It was early in the season, the end of May. Brought him up, thrust him in the lineup in center field.
And then you don't have to wear that MLB debut patch too long.
Eric,
have you seen that? They got that little patch on there where you basically wear it until you make your debut. It's almost like, hey, here's a rookie, everybody, just so you know this guy's never been in a game. And you can't take that patch off until you actually get in a game.
Well, that's not necessary.
3 months later, they give Harris $100 million contract, potentially $100 million. Yeah. I mean, because he earned it. But
he did.
Anyway, you talked about Giles. It's going to be interesting to see him in spring because he threw for a bunch of teams a couple of weeks ago and was 93, 94, 95, I think up to 96 maybe. The Braves think with him healthy and throwing and with their guys and working, they think he might be able to add a tick or two to that. And if he does, he's going to get up close to what he used to be. He could be a potential impact guy for them if he's if he can get back close to what he was before. He was
I don't know
nasty,
how anybody
man.
throws with their, you never really reach your peak velo outside of games. You're on a lot of times these showcases, you're on a indoor mound, you don't have cleats on, so your traction is not as good. All those little things affect it. You don't have adrenaline. And for me, when I was pitching, until a hitter stepped in the box, a hitter getting in the box gave me 3 or 4 miles an hour every time. Even if you looked at your warm-up pitches, you kind of peak when you come into the game. I feel pretty good today, be 87. And shit, and now I'm in trouble. And then your first pitch when a hitter gets in there is 92.
Yeah,
so
it is. I'm
game.
with you. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I'll be curious now. We're kind of forced to go down these paths. I like some of the period where we had less information for a while, but the reality is that now we know. Okay, even if it is 94, 95, what else is going with it? I don't mean the off-speed pitches, but what are the other numbers in there that these teams are looking at, whether it's, the vertical break, attack angle, whatever it is. And I do enough to make sure I know what you guys are talking about or what they're talking about. But I do think for what it's worth on broadcast, there's a balance in there of making sure we're just not hitting people over the head. But if it's something significant that the team is focused on, and I'll be curious with Ken Giles, if there's metrics to his fastball that they really like, then I think it's probably worth mentioning. So I think to me that is, I'm as curious about that part as I am whether or not he gets a couple of more ticks, which I'm with Eric. I think he'll easily get that in spring because there's just something about doing those bullpens inside that just,
Yeah.
I mean, nothing compares to looking at a hitter trying to take you deep in the box.
Yep.
Your job's kind of like I think mine is when you're writing for a certain audience, you're reaching a mainstream audience that ranges from, people in their teens to people in their 80s that have been or 90s that have been following the Braves forever. And you have to be, like you say, you can't beat them over the head with metrics, even if you know exactly what some of these metrics are and think that it might be able to help some really hardcore people that are into that. You got to kind of balance it, right?
We do, yep. And I think it's always a work in progress. The reality is you're never going to make everybody happy. I don't, maybe Vin Scully had 100% approval rating, but he might have been the only one.
Right.
And even then, you never know. That's just the reality of our business.
And Skip Carey here
yeah.
back in the day.
Yeah, exactly. And so I always, I try to, do the best I can with that. I always feel like if I cannot explain it really quickly and really easily,
Right.
just let it go. Right? Because there's some great numbers out there that obviously we see it all over the internet. Organizations use them to build their rosters that just don't translate well into a conversation on television.
Right.
When you're a column, you have a little bit more time to kind of explain it. I think that matters. But if we can't get to it quickly, like a lot of the run value numbers for me, I feel like it just doesn't compute to a broadcast. And I just can't do it,
and weighted runs and all that. Great stats, but it's hard to explain to some people.
Exactly. It's not a knock on the numbers either. Quite honestly, it's just a matter of we're still trying to entertain people, keep them engaged. And when this team is as good as it is, you don't need it, right?
Exactly.
Those first 6 years when the Rangers were always under 500 and having 100-loss seasons in there, we had to work a little harder, dig a little bit deeper. Here's why, actually, I know this guy's hitting 190, but let me tell you why it's actually better than, I had to do it. Where you don't have to do it when the team is good. It was really nice last year just to be able to actually call the games on the field and stay focused there. But I try to stay, current as much as possible. But again, hopefully not boring the crap out of people.
Yeah, when you can just say he's got 30 and 100, that's a pretty simple route. You don't need to dive in.
Exactly.
How much are you looking forward to working with Brandon? Because I got to tell you, man, this guy's good. The nights when I'm not at the ballpark and I watch the games, he's an entertaining listen, and he's like you said, he keeps it entertaining. The storytelling, the jokes. I mean, he's got a little edge to him. He's like, you got to be careful with some of the things he says. He might set you up, man. But he's got some humor. He's a funny dude and very entertaining. Great voice.
Great voice. I think there's the balance of like having the confidence as a guy walking into a huge booth the first time, but then also the humility, right? He thought he balanced that really well.
Right. Yeah,
entertaining, funny. Went back and watched a lot of the games. Certainly wasn't intimidated by being in that booth. And we'll have some fun for sure. We've gotten together a couple of times already. When we went to Braves Fest, they moved it inside, obviously, because of the rain. And so we did a little Bally's thing that was on the concourse where Nick and Trevor were there for 45 minutes and people would come by and take pictures. And then Brandon and I did it. I was overwhelmed. First of all, people were really nice. Like I keep saying, I really couldn't believe it. Like, welcome me, all this stuff. It was great. But the reaction to Brandon, I mean, I felt like I was with Elvis because then once we left and we had to walk somewhere else, it's like a crowd. People were stopping him. I'm just kind of watching. I'm like, this is amazing that he pulled this off in 1 year in such a big time booth where it's so important to these fans. Like I went through it, right? When I got to Texas, Tom Grieve had been the main analyst. Tom Grieve played for the Rangers. He was their GM. He worked in the front office, and then he's been in the booth. At that point, it was almost 25 years. He literally is Mr. Ranger. And here I come taking over the lead role, and he's going to step back. Some of the old timers were not happy about that. It was really obvious. It took me a couple of years to kind of warm some of them up, and one of the greatest compliments I felt like I ever get was, I really didn't like you when you first got here, but I've really grown to like you. Now I'm going to miss you. I'm like, all right, I can't. Like to me, that one feels good. But so I know what it's like. And, same thing here with Frenchie. He's so beloved by this group. I'm glad he's still sticking around. Everybody kind of knows why he's backing off here a little bit, but I'm excited to jump in with Brandon. There was one game that I was watching early in the season. I already busted his balls about it, where he had his Tommy Boy references mixed up. They were talking about black. He was saying Black Sheep was supposed to be Tommy Boy. I love that stuff. And I almost love when either I or my partner gets it wrong, then gets it right, because then it's just ball busting time, and probably for the rest of the year when it seems the right time to bring it up again. So I love mistakes as much as I love getting it right.
Did you see we had a couple of lines last year that people were like, "Whoa, did he say that?" And it was hilarious. But the one with Mastravoni, was the guy? And
that came up quite a bit at the Fan Fest, at the Braves Fest.
That came in, it was like you couldn't have scripted this for him to let. And he said, and it's probably a good thing the Frenchie's in the other booth.
Yeah, that was amazing. And
Right.
not scared to do it too. Like that's the
No,
thing. You may come in knowing there was a change. And of course you want to be the guy the team wants you to be. That matters. I tell people all the time, you want to, of course, you want to have the approval of the fans, but the things that matter most are what do your bosses at the Braves think? What do your
yeah,
bosses at Bally's think? Like those are the people that are going to decide whether or not you're going to continue to be in that booth. And so, yeah, first year in, not afraid
yeah.
to take a chance and have some
Right
fun.
away
And
he did
he
too.
crushed it. Yeah, he crushed
Right
it.
away he did. Well, he did one of those in the first month of the season. It was like, wow. First week it might have been. I forget what it was, but it was one of those that was like, whoa. Now I'd say that, but I'm not doing games on Bally. But yeah, he's really good. And I mean, you got the guys that you have come around too that could do occasional stints in there.
Mm.
I mean, like
Yep.
Glavine coming in there, and Chipper obviously is around with as an assistant hitting coach and all that. So that's got to be pretty cool. I mean, they're a good organization, I think, as far as staying connected with their greats, because so many of them live down here, and if not,
Yeah.
they pass through, and it's a
Yep.
good atmosphere there. What from afar, like the Braves went there last year and played up in Texas.
Mhm.
From afar, what's been your perception of this Braves team and the thing they have going now and what they've been able to do and how they're sitting for now in the future?
Yeah, that's the thing that jumps out, right? I mean, the way that there's risk involved, but the way that they've gone forward with locking up players.
Yeah.
And I think I remember it was John or somebody having the conversation like, well, of course, there's no way they're all going to work out, right? You can't take that many chances
Right.
and do a bunch of these, team friendly deals. Obviously, some of them are still pretty expensive and they're all going to hit. And I don't know if I could pick the one that's not going to work right now with any
Yeah.
confidence, which is
So
kind of
far, they
amazing.
all are. I mean,
Yeah, it's really kind of nuts. I mean, of course, the guy's going to have a bad year here. Of course, the guy's going to get hurt and miss some time, but that's all kind of built into the risk that you take. So I think that part of it in particular, I had to interview Alex in front of some corporate sponsors. Alex Anthopoulos, one of the first things I did here for the Braves, and we were talking. I brought that up, and I mistakenly said, and I said, you have Ronald under control for what, 4 more years? And I swear, I mean, like 5. Like he went,
oh
it
yeah,
was like a half a second. He was like, no, 5 more years.
steel
Like you
trap
think about,
mind, man. That guy.
yeah, how important it is. And obviously, I mean, that's like saying one of your children is 3 years younger than they really are, whatever it is, like getting
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
significantly wrong. But just to go to show you, like, obviously, how much that means to them. And, that he's a perfect example, right? He would have been a free agent at the end of this year, and he'd
Yeah.
been walking into a $400 million contract.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
just a reality of the situation. And instead, he's going to be a Brave for 4 more years after this one. At least, which is incredible. So that part sticks out. The depth of lineup, obviously, pretty obvious one, but a big one to sit there and watch it and the damage. And I saw it last year with the Rangers. That was probably one of the deeper lineups that I've ever watched on an everyday basis. And so seeing that now and this one even probably, quite honestly, a little bit better. And then to see what happens here with Kelnick. I mean, that's the thing that I think is going to be most interesting is how he fits in.
Yeah. You saw him quite a bit, right?
Yeah, we did. I saw him a lot in Seattle. Saw a guy that's got all the talent in the world. I felt like he would grind like crazy, be really hard on himself.
Yeah.
He seemed to me, just from the outside, and probably not fair to say until you really ask, but you try to make these evaluations, and he looked like a guy that never gave himself credit for when he did something well, but beat himself up at everything he did wrong, like in a bad way. You could see it on his face. And what he did last year, his first 45 games were incredible. And the
That's what I
next
was going to ask
45
you about.
was brutal.
You saw him during that span?
Yeah, and then that second 45, he fell apart, and then he kicked the cooler, and he learned from it. So to ask what he did those first 45, the whole year is asking a lot. I think he had 10 home runs over that time. OPS was over 900.
Yeah.
But I did in our little bold predictions. I was like, this guy could hit 30. You mentioned 30 and 100 before. I'm like, he could do it, especially
Eric
in
said
this
the same
lineup. He's
thing.
sitting near the bottom. Yeah, so that's exciting to see what could be as good as they are. It could almost be better, and there's just not a hole. I don't see a hole in his team.
How about Kelnick going from? I know they have a superstar over there too in Seattle, but still, especially early on when he was struggling, Kelnick was kind of carrying the offense, and he was batting cleanup over there. Golden child, biggest bonus ever in the organization. How about going from that to going over here? He's going to be hitting the bottom third of the lineup. He's really going to have no pressure except what he puts on himself, which I know he puts some on himself, but nobody's expecting him to come in. People honestly here, Braves fans would be happy if this guy hits 280 with 20 home runs.
Yeah.
Given the rest of their lineup. And he could do a lot better than
yeah.
that. But how much is that going to help him not having that pressure and coming over here and just being able to be a piece of this lineup and not be a guy that they're putting the weight on his shoulders?
Yeah, I think it'll be big. I mean, obviously, you mentioned having J-Rod there. I always looked at that dynamic, too. It was kind of fascinating, right? Because Kelnick obviously was kind of supposed to be on that same path. And Julio Rodriguez ran with it, becomes kind of one of these faces of baseball. He gets the big contract. and Kelnick faded in the background a little bit. Then he started to emerge last year, and then he faded again, right? It's all these up and down, up and down. Of course, we know how difficult it is to play this game at a high level consistently. But I do think there is a mental component for him. Not that I say it's going to completely go away here with the Braves. I don't think that's the case, but I do think there's the opportunity for a big relief because he's not going to be having so much of that weight, at least from a team standpoint. Now it becomes, to me, internally, how much are you putting on yourself, right? I just saw that he retweeted MLB's top 10 like breakout players of the year, and he was on that list, and he retweeted it like excited to get going, right? Which is cool, but that still tells me he's putting some really big expectations on himself, and so managing that properly. Listen, it's the battle for every big leaguer. And trying to figure that part out. And if he's around the right guys, and who knows who that'll be, maybe he had that in Seattle, maybe he didn't. But thinking about whether it's coaches or teammates that can help kind of walk him through that a little bit, and maybe eliminate the super highs and the super lows and get a little bit more steady. If that happens, we'll see the best version of him.
Don't ride the roller coaster. I mean, that was the best advice I got early in my career. Just come to the field, be the same every day. You have a great game, don't get too high on yourself. If you have a bad one, you're going to have time to fix it. But the guys that, like, if you watched Julio, when he came up, he had a terrible first month or two, and he's kind of getting some tough calls in the zone. He smiled through it all. And soon enough, things click if you keep that positive attitude. I just think that's the hardest battle for young players, is not to get too wrapped up in the outside noise and your current stock of that day. Just stay steady, and he's got all the talent in the world. So I think if he's with this good group here, he can turn it on.
He's already got a thing going with Austin Riley because they got this background as hunters. They both love hunting. That's all they do in the offseason. And I think Austin Riley's a perfect guy for him to talk to, because Austin had that terrible couple of months when he first came up. He was great the first month, and then people started making adjustments to him. He struggled, got hurt. Then he comes back, and he's been, the last 3 or 4 years, he's just been one of the best hitters in the league. And I think him, Matt Olson, Darno, hell, I think Marcell Ozuna is going to be able to help him. All the guys talk about him is how much he's able to help guys with a little bit of a pep talk here and there, because he's been through some struggles. But I think he's going to have any number of guys in that locker room, in that clubhouse, that are going to be able to help him. And being flanked by Michael Harrison, center, he's not going to have a lot of pressure to get to some of those balls in the gaps and all that kind of thing. That outfield with Acuna, Harris, and Kelnick, if Kelnick plays like he did anywhere close to what he did in the first 45 games, that's going to be the best outfield in the league, if not the majors.
Yeah. And they all
Snit will
play
keep
center
rolling
field
out there too.
All can play center field. Yeah.
Hey, you know what I found amazing in my little bit of research, that I'm sitting there playing catch up the best I possibly can, that Marcell Ozuna is the only one in the Braves outfield with a Gold Glove in the outfield,
that's
on that roster.
That's insane. That's great.
You look around and you're like, who's the only
myself.
Brave that has a Gold Glove in the outfield? It's Marcell Ozuna, the one guy they're probably not going to put in the outfield.
No, he's not getting anywhere near the outfield, barring several injuries. He's more likely to play first base this year. He wants to play some first base, and they might be allowed. They might be able to give Olson 1 or 2 days off. But even that, it's like Olson wants to play every day. And he showed last year, after going through a lull, he got called fire again, and look what he did. But it's so hard for Snit. Once those guys get past a certain point in the season, it's so hard for Snit to give them a day off unless they're just really bottoming out, really struggling. But it's like, okay, I've played 100 games. You're not going to take me out of the lineup now just for a random rest day. So, but Ozuna played a lot of infield there last year, took a lot of ground balls at first. And we asked Snit one time late in the season, really late in the season. So if you need to give Olson a day, can Ozuna play first? No. Now next year, maybe we take him over. We take him up to Dunedin, and he gets in a game. Maybe that'll happen at spring training. But now, no. But he's worked really hard to try to get some innings at first base.
How about you, Eric, man? But I admire it, but I do think, being out there every day, especially in Atlanta, is a challenge. Like the Rangers last year with Marcus Semien, right? That was his thing. That was Marcus Semien's thing, and hitting at the top of the lineup. And no doubt, and he's a little bit older, not old, but he's a little bit older than the guys we're talking about. But we would see him fade just a little bit, and he kind of struggled through the postseason. And they're playing indoors, right? They're indoors at home. They're indoors when they're in Houston. Like, it's for
Arizona.
the most part, temperature controlled for the Rangers. And I remember watching and thinking, I would never say this to him, but I'm like, you know what? Perhaps next year they pick a day or 2 or 3 here where they just give him that little bit of.
I'm wondering about that too. I'm wondering if Snit, when they've evaluated everything that maybe possibly contributed to their demise in the second consecutive NLDS. That has to have come up in the meetings with the coaches and all that. I mean, Snit is as old school, as hardcore players manager as there is, and he listens and also wants to play every day, and he's done it several times now. But you got to wonder if they look at that and go, what if we just tell you beforehand, so you're not set on playing 162, then maybe, 2 months into the season, we give you a day off. Then we give you 4 or 5 during the year, and ahead of time. And it's not like you have this streak going in the back of your head. You got to play every day. I'm wondering if they could, I think they could benefit from it too. I don't see anything gained by playing 162 instead of, say, 158.
Yeah, guys think playing every day, that's how you put up your numbers. Yeah, I always heard position players talk about that. This might be the day I hit 2 homers.
Right.
Yeah. I want to be out there every day. But I think it definitely, it piles up. And especially playing in Atlanta in that heat, you may not feel tired, man. But yeah, it catches
some of those day games. Every one of those guys, even Acuna, although he didn't have a long stretch at all, but every one of those guys had a little blip in the season last year where they, for a week or 2 weeks, Olsen's was like 3 weeks where they were terrible. And you got to wonder if maybe, they could have benefited from a day or two off there. He gave Austin, I think, a day or two off. He got banged up one time, but for the most part, Snit, if they want to play every day, Snit kind of gives them that leeway. And I think maybe he needs to take that into account this year and say, hey,
especially when you're comfortable in the division. I think it's different if you're chasing, if you're down a game or up 2 games, but
chasing a Mets like
5 to 10 game lead, it's not going to hurt.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'd be curious how the guys would react, or at some point, maybe as you get a little bit older, who's the guy that's going to have that conversation. It certainly benefited guys like, Andrew McCutchen as he gets a little bit older, and other stars in the game that at some point, I don't know if it, I don't think it's a pride thing. I get it. You want to be out there. And I thought you bring up a good point. You just never know which day is going to be the day. And if you're going well, that's the other part of like the pre,
you
like
want to sit.
When, a few years ago with the Rangers, it was basically pre-programmed. Like, all right, we're gonna, thinking a week or 2 out, he'll get this day off. It looks like we're facing this lefty, we'll get that day off. What if the guy's on fire?
Yeah, and comes back not on fire.
Yeah, and I think you got to play him. You got to use your instincts as a manager, I think, to give them those days off. But a day game after a night game, sometimes when it's 98 degrees here in Atlanta. But hey, last thing, one other thing was Charlie Culberson. And what's your thoughts on this guy at age 34? Trying to move from utility infielder, outfielder, kind of like we talked about Giles, picked the wrong team to try to make the bullpen. How about Culberson is trying to become a reliever? I know why he did it, because he lives here like you. He's got his wife and kids. He can go between AAA and the Major League Park and commute to either one. But what do you think his chances? This guy's, not your typical position player when he pitched in those 8 games over the last 5 years. And you got to know him in Texas, I'm sure. But through 93, maybe topped out 94. As a position guy on the mound, what do you think the chances of a guy doing that at age 34? I think he's going to be 35 in April.
Yeah, so everybody pulling for him because he's like the greatest guy in the world. I know how much Braves fans love him. Same thing in Texas, and the idea of even just going to AAA and being close by, if that's what it takes, and seeing how it goes for a month and finding out whether or not it could be real. I love the competitive part of it for him. He was on a radio show yesterday. I wasn't working. I'm like, really? The day we have Colby and I'm not even here? But he was talking about it and digging in a little bit. And you certainly can appreciate all the reasons why he wants to do it and give it a shot. He basically said, I feel like when I look at where baseball is and where I am right now, my best chance is going to be as a pitcher, and realizing that, even though I think defensively he's still incredibly versatile, he felt like the offense just wasn't keeping pace to give him that opportunity. And so why not go ahead and take a shot at it? I mean, for just about all of us, right? You go as long as you possibly can. And, for me, as an example, at the very end, I'm trying to be a sidearmer at 39 years old. Why? Because I just want to try it. I want to get it out of my system. And if I get lit doing it, so be it. At least I can like walk away and say, man, that's it. Like, for sure, I gave everything I had at every angle with every kind of pitch, and there's just not a place for you anymore. And I think everybody, kind of wants to go through that. So I'm pulling for him. He's such a great guy, great family guy. And quite honestly, anytime I even thought about the possibility of working in the Braves booth, I've never even entertained it too much, because I'm like, well, Frenchie's there. He's young. He's going to be there forever. Right. And then quite honestly, I'm like, and if for some reason he didn't want to do it, Charlie Culberson's going to slide in and do it anyway. So I don't even allow myself to think that it would be a possibility. So I hope he pitches for 10 years so I can have a job.
Yeah, that's funny. We've had Murph on here, and I've talked to Murph about this a lot of times. If Murph had retired about 4 or 5 years early when his career, when he had so many injuries the knees, the back. I mean, he had days in Colorado he couldn't even get on the field. You know, he had to go through so much. If Murph had retired when he left the Braves instead of accepting that trade to Philly, I think he'd be in the Hall of Fame now. He should be in the Hall of Fame anyway with 2 MVPs, but his numbers took a ding playing hurt. And you talk to him and you go like, why'd you do it? And he's, I just wanted to play. I love playing. I wanted to keep playing and come back, show I could still do it. But he was just so driven, even though he had kids at home, you know, a lot of kids by then. He wanted to, he just couldn't stop playing, even though he was a shell of what he used to be. But there's so many guys that are like that. Other guys can walk away from the game like Barry Sanders. We're on the top of their peak of their powers, but those are few and far between. Most guys are like you just said, want to do it as long as they possibly can and squeeze everything they can out of a career.
Yeah, think about Manny Ramirez. I mean, one of the greatest hitters. I understand the PED stuff that was there, but the fact that he was playing in Taiwan, he's playing independent ball in Japan. We know probably more than anybody, at least that I've ever seen, that Ichiro Suzuki has the hardest time taking the uniform off. Like I'll see video of him like pitching against high school girls in Japan, and he's getting after it. Like he's not like, just throwing it in there. Yeah, it's like, what, and I get it. And near the end, I was always told that guys were like, buddies of mine that were already been retired, like, hey man, just make him tear it off you. Trying to go as long as you can, just so you know that, like I said, you can look in the mirror. And I think Charlie's in that spot right now and saying, you know what, these are things I wanted to try, gave it everything I have. And then when the game tells you no, you move on to the next thing.
Yeah, he'd have to ask himself that for the rest of his life. I mean, he came in not even training as a pitcher and through 94.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to just get that question answered, even if you don't get a good answer and you're done. Let's just cross this off the list.
As hard as it was for you to go back and forth between Texas and leave the family in Atlanta, how jealous do you think guys are that are in the same boat as you, who aren't able to keep their toe in the game like you are? They have to go back for alumni things or whatever, but you're around a game every day. How nice is that to at least experience a clubhouse from where you do?
Yeah, I feel really fortunate. Grinding. I was done pitching in 2013 in January in winter ball, and then I was fortunate to get some stuff with MLB.com that April, freelancing like crazy and doing everything I possibly could. College games, radio shows, wherever I could fill in, like just kind of how I was as a player that continued. Like you're hustling, you're doing whatever you can. And so I think for some guys, if you have really good careers and you kind of want to be around, but you don't want to jump all the way in, that'll be a challenge because it eventually is going to catch up to you. You can only tell old stories so many times. You can only be mad at analytics for so long. And so you got to adapt a little bit. That's just a reality if you want to be around it, whether you want to coach, want to be in broadcasting, whatever it may be. And then I was fortunate to get an audition for Fox when FS1 launched. They launched at the end of 13. I auditioned for them in January of 14 and got to work for them and got lucky. Almost kind of like the guys you were talking about, how the Braves would bring in guys, not have to pay them very much, but get a lot out of them. So I went to a spot that had, Frank Thomas and other guys and bigger names. And then I got the job as well. I doubt I was making anything close to what those guys were making, but really got a chance to kind of develop myself as a broadcaster, working for Fox and doing studio for 3 years and doing national games for 6 years before I settled in with the Rangers. So, I definitely feel fortunate because I know how fickle this business can be. But I also, I put the work in and I make sure I spend the time and I study broadcasting and I like it. And I like talking broadcasting, and I'm always asking questions to other broadcasters. Early in my career, especially asking, like anytime we had a play-by-play guy on talking about his team on radio, I'm asking about his analyst and asking Al Michaels, hey, tell me about your best analyst. The guys that you like the most, whatever it may be. And as an example, he's one of the guys that sticks out. And he had said, he's like, the best guys I've ever worked with are the ones that were willing to put their playing career behind them and their broadcast career in front of them. Like little things like that you'd pick up along the way to try to grind it out and hopefully stay employable.
Is it better being, I don't know if you've been able to judge this because I don't know how much national stuff you did, but is it better? Is there something about being a voice of a team or an analyst with a team, traveling with the team, being around the same guys and feeling a little bit more like you're part of that team than it is when you drop in and do the game of the week for this team or that team and don't really have that interaction with the players, especially as you get older and they don't even hardly know you,
Which I'm okay with, but I would
None
say
of the national guys, they don't get that interaction.
Oh yeah, I got you. So the local gig to me is the better one. When I interviewed with the Rangers, it was still Fox back then when all the regions were Fox, and I was still under contract with Fox to do national stuff. And I said, hey, I'd really like to take a shot at this Ranger job. And they allowed me to do it because it was still in the same Fox family. But I just saw that as something that would be a little bit more stable. a little bit more. That show that I was doing nationally in FS1 is no longer there. The highlight show called MLB
Right.
Whip Around. So that went away anyway a couple years later. So I feel grateful that I got out when I did. But there is something about digging all the way in on a team, being part of a community. I'm still not great about this, Eric. I don't know how many times you've been back like in the clubhouse when you're done. I'm still a little uncomfortable in the clubhouse just because I'm like, you know what, man, it's your place. Like I'm not going to loiter. You guys got a ton going on. You got to answer questions from everybody else. And I'm just going to stay out of your way. If something comes up, I might ask you real quick and then I'm going to get out of there. So I don't bother guys much. I probably could be better at it, but I'd rather lean on the side of stay out of the way than ever get in the way. And so from that standpoint, while, I'll dig in on this team as much as possible, like I always do, I will also give their guys their space and let them prepare. I rely heavily more, quite honestly, on the coaches. I played with Sal Fasano, played with Eddie, like guys, Walt Weiss is from my small hometown,
Yeah, that's right.
In New York, right? So it's just, to me, I'll rely on those guys because I'll get the information that I need without, having to burn anybody to help kind of formulate opinions and go from there. But digging in and being part of the team stuff for me on the local side is much more of a draw. Obviously, there's bigger money and everything else in national and more attention. I prefer this kind of work, quite honestly, because it's cozier.
Yeah, I would think so.
Like
And the
to let you know,
familiarity
too.
and routines and a familiarity and all that, and getting to know a team, like you said, instead of feeling like when you're talking about a player and you haven't seen him play every day and you're dropping in to do one game and you're relying on somebody else is what they're telling you about that player. But what you were talking about there, I would think that this Braves team is as good, if not better than any to do that, to talk to Sal Fasano, to talk to Walt Weiss, when he was here. But I mean, you look at Eddie Perez and Snit, just to get information about these guys, because they're going to tell you unfettered. They're going to tell you the truth. And they're all so easy to talk to and engaging and want to talk about the team.
Yeah, that part's nice, man. Cranny, too. We had him on our radio show.
Yeah, he's great.
I know, and I don't know if we had ever met before, but so he's on the show. We're talking, and then I got his number and text him after, and my goodness, he was just incredible.
Sites is great. Sites is awesome.
Yeah, so those relationships, to me at this point, it's not to say the players' ones aren't important,
right?
But those are probably more important to what I do now. I played with Marcel before he was ever a big leaguer. There's no way he remembers it, but we were on the same Dominican team like in 2012.
Oh, man. Yeah, he don't remember it.
He wasn't even a big leaguer. He was a star in the DR that year. Like he was putting up big numbers. Him and Gene Segura both. I hadn't heard of either one of them at that point.
Wow.
And they were crushing it in the DR. And so it's cool to see. And Eric, actually, the new bullpen coach, Eric was also on that team. But I was in and out quick. The super old guy. I was 39, dude. A super old guy there. The old gringo that probably nobody what the heck's this guy doing here? But we'll look forward to revisiting maybe that.
I played with Bartolo in Oakland and had to reintroduce myself to him later on when I came to the Mets.
That's about how it goes, which is all right, man. It's all in good fun. But yeah, it seems like an amazing group. Alex is really good. So
he's the best. To talk to that guy.
We pinch ourselves, man. We pinch ourselves a little bit about this whole deal, man, for sure.
Alex will blow you away, man.
Yeah.
Talking to that guy.
Been great. Yeah, he's been great. And when the whole thing even started potentially coming up, my wife's like, there's no way, right? It's not going to work out. No way. Like, we're so used to nothing going our way. We had a long career, but it was just jumbled, man. And so the idea that there's any stability in our life, that's not really what our life has been about. I keep telling people, man, that 30 years in the game, 19 as a player, 11 as a broadcaster, I spent 1 month living in my primary residence during the season. And that was insane. Like, I bought a house in Houston in 98 and I moved in like September 1st and got traded that off season. And so that was it. That's the only time I've been in my own bed, waking up, going to work, and then coming back to my bed.
I did that exact same thing with Seattle. I closed on a condo and got put on waivers about 2 months later.
It's a good time. This game's awesome, but it is
fun.
But so that'll be a nice change for sure. Somebody's like, "Oh, how far are you from the ballpark?" I'm like, I don't know, maybe 40 minutes without traffic. Who knows with traffic? Oh, it sounds like a lot. I'm like, it's a lot closer than Dallas. It's kind of man, it's a lot closer.
All right. Hey, we won't keep you. I know you got your show to do. Sal Fasano, Bo, how well do you know him?
So we played together in the Yankees in the minor league system, and then I faced him, and I told Gretchen, our producer on TV, and I found the video. I said I hit him twice in a game one time. I only had one start. I only had one start where I punched out 10. It happened to be that game. It was the last night game at Old Tiger Stadium, and somehow I think he got a hit in his first at bat, and then I dinked him the next 2 times. And so, yeah, got to throw a little bit. And so I look forward to certainly reconnecting and catching up with him.
He is something else, man. I talk to him
Yeah.
sometimes and I'm just like, it's amazing somebody hasn't hired him to manage. I'm glad they haven't because he is, and I think he likes doing what he's doing, staying kind of out of the spotlight. But my God, he's a smart guy.
He was good, man. It was like throwing a pillow. I mean, those hands were unbelievably soft.
Yeah. All right. Hey, listen, man, we've kept you a long time. Really appreciate the time, man. And we're looking forward to seeing you and when Brandon and Booth together. It's going to be great. I think the Braves keep hitting home runs with the broadcasters they hire, man. I know a lot of teams would love to have either one of you, but that's going to be a great combination. I think Brandon's going to make that an easy transition for you. I'll see you down at spring training, I'm sure.
Yeah, it feels like, I'm actually going to go down here in February early on when position players report just to get some work done. And then we have our games at the very end. I think the first game is March 20th. That'll be on Bally's. But I told you this before, but I love your guys' pod. It's hugely helpful to me to catch up. Like I'll hear something, it kind of puts me down a rabbit hole, doing a little research and catching up because there's some things that I'm not going to be able to find out on my own. So I'm looking forward to listening all season long.
People out there would ask that don't understand why the hell Bally doesn't do, and they're not the only ones that do this, why they don't space out the spring training games so that they can see some of these young kids play early on.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
I know it's money, and they have to do them together.
Me, it's just go down for, like, I saw the Tiger schedule was posted the other day, and it was like March 7th, March 11th, March 19th. I'm like, oh, they're just, what are you going to go back and forth or stay there the whole time? So I like that it's 4 games selfishly over the last week or so.
All right. Hey, it's been a pleasure. We appreciate it. You guys are going to enjoy this, dude. I'm telling you. That's it for us. 755 forever, and we are out. Don't forget, email us if you want to sponsor us or go to the website and buy some merch. We need the